Jersey is a leading international finance centre with a broadly based financial services industry. For 50 years, Jersey's been attracting deposits and investments from institutions and private clients across the world. Jersey has been a prominent player in the field of administering trusts since the 1960s. The emphasis today has shifted away from the very simple trust and underlying company structure for UK families to high-value and more complex structures involving trusts, companies, limited partnerships, and now foundations for international families.
Over a period of time, the regulator's been able to benefit from the experience that had gone before. So now we have a very robust laws to work with, codes of practice which are quite prescriptive about the type of people you employ and the corporate governance that you should be engaging in your business.
The core activities that comprise trust company business, acting as a company director, a trustee, a secretary, providing a registered office, for example, were identified, and the regulatory law was crafted to essentially wrap around all of those types of services. The regulatory regime that's been in place the last 10 years has stood the test of time. Whilst there have been some amendments to the codes of practice and the subordinate legislation, essentially it has remained intact and indeed has proved effective when we've been reviewed by formal bodies such as the IMF and received the very good reports that Jersey has.
The Jersey Association of Trust Companies, JATCo, is an organisation that represents the majority of trust companies in Jersey. It has over 80 member firms, which employ an estimated 4,000 people locally. Its members, and those employed by them, contribute a significant percentage of the island's annual tax revenues.
From a practical perspective, most of our work is probably dealing with the sort of large volumes of consultative papers that are produced because of the regulatory environment in which we have to work. These can be at a local level, they can be at an international level, and the role of JATCo, the members being the trust companies themselves, is to coordinate a response and probably more importantly solicit a response. I think more and more now it's yes, JATCo, our members are represented, but we're working with other professional and trade industry bodies at the same time, because increasingly these are issues that are not necessarily specific. If you take 010, it's not an issue specific to the trust sector. It has equal, potential adverse implications on all areas of the financial services industry. So it's very important that I think that we do work together more and more on these issues.
While the finance industry has evolved to keep pace with the demands of the marketplace, it has been built upon key strengths. There are many factors that influence why trusts are operated from here.
The time zone in which we find ourselves in, our economic and political stability, tax neutrality, which is obviously a key consideration, the fact we've got a highly skilled workforce, and the banking infrastructure is here to deliver what we need to deliver. I think the most important one is the fact that our local government does recognise the importance of the finance industry and will legislate accordingly.
In addition, the Jersey Financial Services Commission has strict codes of practice for trust businesses.
Individuals have to have certain levels of professional qualifications, they have to have prescribed levels of experience. Additionally, the codes require that a trust company act in the best interests of customers. They are formally required to ensure that when they're administering the structures for those customers, whether they be a trust or a company, that they adhere to the legal requirements surrounding those particular vehicles, and that is very specifically set out in the codes of practice which businesses are required to follow. Additionally, there's a specific piece of subordinate legislation that requires businesses to keep the assets of those customers that they look after separate to their own assets. Additionally, firms are required to have prescribed levels of professional indemnity insurance and directors and officers insurance. There are very prescriptive levels of liquidity that need to be maintained within a firm. Also, Jersey has a highly developed and effective anti-money laundering regime, which again has withstood any amount of tire kicking from international agencies. And I think clients that come to Jersey have the benefit of their affairs being handled within a jurisdiction that does have an extremely good reputation and has withstood international scrutiny.
In 2000, the financial services law was extended to cover the trust company services provider sector in the island. And that has inevitably led to a consolidation of the industry. It is more difficult for start-up trust operations to get established, and I think that has led to a natural process of consolidation. I think that said, it is still important that new start-ups do arise. After all, most of the largest trust companies in the island, if they trace their roots back historically, did actually start from fairly humble beginnings. So I think it's getting the balance between regulation, but also having the hurdles, not too high that it prevents, where appropriate, new start-up operations.
I think the key thing that regulation has brought to the island as a whole is the acknowledgement that the trust industry is an industry in its own right and not an add-on to an accountancy or lawyer, a law firm or banking. And I think that the fact that it is a recognised skill set has really helped the development of the industry in more recent years.
An example of the industry's development is the introduction in recent years of foundations.
Foundations are a useful complementary alternative to a trust in trying to help primarily a private client. They are particularly interesting to advisors and clients from civil law jurisdictions where the common law concept of a trust is difficult for them to understand.
When looking at the success of foundations, it's not just actually counting the number of foundations that have been set up in a period. It's actually the wider publicity and interest that created in Jersey itself in terms of the process that the island went through and consultative process which extended outside the island in terms of bringing in the necessary legislation. There is interest and it widens I think critical to the success not only of the trust industry but the financial services industry in Jersey in general is widening the geographical interest in the services we provide.
Well, I think the introduction of the foundations legislation most importantly demonstrates Jersey's commitment to enact new laws and to provide new products and services. That, along with the incorporated cell legislation, have been useful. It's just important to understand that they're not a means to an end in themselves. You've still got to provide the service. I guess you could think of them like tools in a toolbox. They're things you can use to achieve what you need to achieve, but you need the human intervention to make it all work.
With its 50-year history, Jersey's sophisticated trust industry has diversified according to economic demands. The sector is now well placed to grow and impact on the global playing field.
Over a period of time, many Jersey-based trust company providers have established offices overseas to ensure, number one, that they can service their clients, and number two, that the excellence of service carries through that they've been used to in Jersey. By definition, in our own businesses, we share levels of corporate governance that have been brought out of the Jersey model to start with in our remote offices, and I think continuing to develop the offering worldwide to other centres is a very positive thing for us to do.
Jersey is a good place to establish a trust company business. We do have very high regulatory standards in Jersey. That provides very good safeguards for the customers who want their affairs managed in Jersey. And it also means that we apply a great deal of scrutiny to people wanting to set up in Jersey because we guard the island's reputation very closely. The regulations are there to help support and maintain that good reputation that have been built up. So we are able to make sure that only those that are fit and proper are registered to carry out those activities on the island.